Shane's New Telescope on episode 433 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. So we have a new Patreon supporter, Shane.
We do. Thank you, Bob, for becoming our latest supporter. And as always, thank you to all of our supporters. We really appreciate your contributions, and it helps keep the show going.
Had an email from Bob, actually. He not only is a Patreon supporter, listener, but he sent us a nice email, so I'm going to read that now. If you're good with that.
I'm good with that.
Bob goes on to say, "Hi, Chris and Shane, longtime listener. I love to sit outside while imaging and listen to your podcasts. It gives me great ideas as to what to shoot and look at in the night sky or for my next session. I have started something at work as a joke only, and it turned out into a much requested feature each week. I work for a community bank, and as a network manager, we use a in-house communication tool. In January, people started to post about their dogs, and as a joke, I ended up posting an image of IC434. I included a copy of the image. Fantastic image, Bob. Love looking at the Horsehead Nebula as a dark nebula B33 superimposed on the emission nebula IC434. Very cool image. Thank you for that. It has turned into something I never expected. It is now named Science Thursday. And no matter which branch I go to, I am known as Science Thursday guy. And everyone always tries to get me to give them a sneak peek about next week's image. It is now hard for me to keep up with images due to weather not cooperating with me. Everyone at all levels of the company love it and look forward to it, and it is rewarding to share the joys of the universe with everyone." Man, Shane, what a great idea to bring your astronomy into work and to bring joy to everybody that you work with.
Yeah, I love that idea. Certainly imaging makes it easier to share, because you can do that during the daytime, and, people appreciate those pretty pictures. So yeah, I love it.
He goes on to say, "I love when you guys do reviews of equipment, as it gives me a good perspective and approach to things I have not thought of. I had stopped visual observing a while ago due to some challenges looking through eyepieces. After one of the podcasts, I realized my eyepieces just didn't have enough eye relief. So I got a new set of Solustron Luminos eyepieces with longer eye relief, and I'm now actually able to see things again through the telescope." Well, there you go, Shane.
Yeah. I'm glad that worked out, because that's kind of an easy one to solve if you just need a little bit of eye relief.
Yeah, simple solution.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a little foreshadowing there, because you're going to talk about a new piece of equipment. So thanks to you, I have gotten back into visual observing. I am a 20 plus year member of the Rockland Astronomy Group. And he says, we didn't need this. That's the club associated with NEAF, for the Northeast Astronomical Forum. And he does both visual observing and images. But I didn't need to know that was the club associated with NEAF, because I've been a longtime follower of NEAF. And they used to broadcast from cloudy nights. Back when Tom Trussick was there, and he would go around and do like a live show of it. I used to always watch those. It was fantastic.
Yeah, he'd do sort of a walk around of all of the booths, and you got sort of a sense of almost what it would be like to be there.
Yeah, I mean,
probably
really
a little
good.
safer because you're not able to buy things. So
maybe I bought a few things, but somehow, I don't know, it worked out that way. Actually, one year I spent as much as it would have cost me to go to the event to buy stuff that was featured at the event. So I'm just saying. Okay. In fact, this past weekend was a bit special, as we had a guest show up for an event. Al Nagler was there, and he was demoing and allowing everyone to look through the TNVC night vision monocular put out by TeleVue. It was an amazing experience, and the detail it brought out was fantastic to see. Well, the weather was not great. It ended up being cloudy, but we still had time to use it and take a look at the North American Nebula at 1 power. Al made sure everyone got a turn with it, and I was honored that he even connected it to my scope, a William Optics FLT91, to see if we could zoom in on M13. Unfortunately, we could not get enough in focus with it, so we were not able to get it working. It was a decent amount of out focus, and we could make out stars, but they just couldn't tweak it. That's always the thing with new gears, and I get it. Al did bring his TeleVue 140, but was not able to set it up due to the weather, so that was a little bit disappointing. Bob goes on to say, I did mention you guys to him as I told him that you were talking about night vision astronomy not long ago on one of your podcasts, and I really wanted to look at the night vision from Tel Aviv. So thanks for mentioning that to Al Nagler. Very cool.
That
Maybe we'll have them on the show one day.
Yeah, that would be fun. That TV 140 is a super rare telescope. I don't know how many of those they actually made.
I think not many, maybe
Yeah.
just the one or two or something like that. Because I think it's like the Petzval, it's like the prototype for the NP 101 or something like that,
Okay. Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. We'll have to get Al on to correct me. That would be awesome.
That's right. Yeah.
Eyepieces being used by Bob are Celestron Luminos, Beta Hyperion. He's got a Celestron AVX, CGX, an Ioptron Gem 45, and an Ioptron SEM 70 on a pier. Telescopes include the Astrotech 60, Sharp Star 61, Takahashi FSQ 85, William Optics FLT 91, TPO RC6, Stellar View SVX 130, and a Celestron 9 1/4 Edge HD. Thanks for the great show, Bob. That was pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of interesting gear there. He's got a nice collection of optics and mounts. Yeah, love it.
Thanks for being a Patreon supporter, Bob. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sending us this great note. And thanks for the plug to Al. I think a couple other people have been plugging us to Al Nagler, so it would be awesome to get him on the show. I even heard that possibly he might be considering it, but I'm just kind of playing that cool, right? Don't want to be too overeager. All right. Shane,
Mhm.
did you get any observing or possibly some new equipment this week?
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit on the last episode, or not the last episode, but a couple episodes ago, that I made a decision to get a Takahashi FOA-60, and it has arrived. Although not really any observing with it. Well, I shouldn't say not any. I was out very briefly yesterday looking at the sun and white light, and
Mm-hmm.
just confirming the collimation and kind of the mechanical function, which was all top notch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a fun session. I didn't observe for very long, but anybody that has white light right now should know that there's a lot of sunspots. There's
Mm-hmm.
probably, gosh, I don't know, at least half a dozen groupings. And then the actual amount of sunspots, probably close to twice that. But, extremely sharp. A lot of faculae visible, particularly along the limb and near some of the larger groupings of sunspots. Yeah, it was really quite nice. The focuser on it is a little bit different than some of the other TAC focusers, like on the 76 DCU, and I think the one that came with your what is yours, a 60 millimeter CB or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So this focuser natively can handle 2-inch eyepieces, and it's just a smoother focuser. It's also like there's less shift within the focuser, and the draw tube is much longer, which is sort of a draw or a knock against some of those other TAC focusers. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's just like there's little quality things there that you sort of notice that are a step up when compared to some of the other TACs. Like again, the 60 that you have and the 76 DCU that I have, the focuser knobs are plastic. They sort of
Mm-hmm.
look like aluminum, but they're plastic. On
Mm-hmm.
the FOA, they're a solid chunk of aluminum.
Huh.
The dew shield retracts on this as well, and it is just one of the smoothest dew shields I think I've ever had the experience of using. It's just quite beautiful, and yeah, the optics, it's hard to say, just doing white light, but certainly they lived up to the billing initially. I do want to see how it does under a dark sky as well as with the planets, to really push it, see what kind of magnification it can take and obviously what it can show. And
Mm-hmm.
I also want to give it a try with my Bino viewer just to see if I can use that natively. I kind of think I can, but it'll be close. So, I'll have to test that out to confirm it for sure.
Nice.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's going to be pretty cool to have that's sort of like the best 60 millimeter telescope ever made or something like that. I think the reputation is well deserved from what I've been able to hear. I'm excited to look through it.
Yeah. The like the Strel ratio is over 99%. So I think it's billed as like the most optically perfect telescope ever made. Just the aperture is only 60 millimeters because the cost to do it on anything larger would just be prohibitive, is what I've read.
Hmm.
So and then, it natively is supposed to be outstanding. And then, when you add the Q extender, which flattens the field even more and extends, the focal length so that there's even less chromatic aberration, is what essentially makes it perfect. So I have
Hmm.
the Q extender installed and probably will leave it like that. That's my intention. It certainly is a longer tube. I should measure it. It's not quite like, say, the TS65 that I used to have, which was a
Hmm.
1,000 millimeter, but it's quite long. It's probably similar in length to the Zeiss telemeter, which
Hmm.
is about 840 millimeters.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's not a small scope, that's for sure, but it's quite nice. And I have it came with two K Aztec rings, so those are quite lightweight, but
Hmm.
very functional, as well as the Beta Click Lock 2-inch adapter on the focuser, which I quite like. And I have so the focuser is a single speed on that telescope, and I have the two-speed adapter. Well, not adapter, but like it's a retrofit to make the focuser two-speed. So you kind of keep the aesthetic of the tack focuser, but gain the advantage of the rate, the second speed ratio for fine focus.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and what diagonal are you going to use with it?
I don't know. I guess it depends. If I'm using my Bino viewer right now, I've got my Beta Zeiss Prism like sort of permanently attached. Well, it's not
Hmm.
permanently, but it's all threaded in, so it's hard to exchange.
Hmm.
But if I'm just using the uh, the scope with monovision, I don't know. I have another 1.25 inch tack prism that I could use, as well as a 2-inch Beta BBSH diagonal if I really want to go with 2-inch, which I don't really do much anymore. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm super excited to hear how this works out once we can get back into some dark skies. But I guess even with the moon coming around, Mike and I were looking at the moon the night before last, and should give some pretty darn good images of the moon, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely it will. And that is something that I really am hoping to, I hope we get some good skies for some lunar observing. I really want to push this thing with magnification just to see how far it can go, because that's the other thing I've read online is it almost seems to be limitless with the magnification that it can take.
Hmm. Yeah, as some of the other tax scopes are. I know that my 60 CB and f5.9, anyway, it runs to about 100x.
Mm.
Pretty good, which I like because it's the 3.5 millimeter pentax and it frames the moon quite lovely because you get about zero point 0.6 or zero point 0.7 degrees of field, and so you can see the entire lunar disk. With that eyepiece. So I like around 100x in these 60s. So what's your focal ratio with the extender in?
Think it's around 15.
Oh,
Because I think
wow.
natively it's like 8.7 or something like that. Like by even without the extender, it's not a fast scope. Like it's, much
88.
slower. What's that?
Yeah, f88.
Yeah. And then I think the extender is like a 1.7 or 1.8, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Huh. Wild. That's going to be super cool. And it's like an ortho design, I think. So how many, is it just two elements or?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I think it's a doublet, although I should probably confirm that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with the Q extender, that's another two elements in there.
Hmm.
So, you're at least four, and maybe it's a triplet. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Well, that's pretty exciting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting a view through that at some point in time. Should be great.
Yeah. I think it'll be a lot of fun. It's sort of a scope that I envisioned as a, later in life retirement, type of telescope, because it's, as you age, sometimes, bigger, larger, heavier things are a bit of a challenge, and this would
Mm.
be ideal for a scenario like that. Um, so why not buy it now and just enjoy it,
Yeah.
for the rest of my days?
Yeah, why not? FOA. Wonder what FOA stands for. Orthoscopic
Fluorite ortho
orthos.
apochromat, I believe.
Ah, well, that makes sense. Huh.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the scope coming in.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And like I mentioned too, a couple episodes ago, it probably means something else will have to be sold. I just have too many scopes in that in that aperture range that, I'm just going to collect dust. So
Hmm.
I don't like gear that I don't use. So I always try to get it in the hands of somebody that would use it. So,
Cool.
we'll make those decisions as time goes on here.
Awesome.
Yeah. And you, I think, have got a little bit of observing in despite perpetual twilight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I bought a couple books too. Do you want to hear about those?
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, it was like breaking up a little. I just didn't know if I lost you. So I get a couple of I think they're called the Annals of the Deep Sky. And so
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I bought the one on Cygnus and Cephas. I've been meaning to buy these for a while, but see, they're pretty expensive to get. Well, first of all, they're around 25 or 35. Like they vary in price. One was 25, one was 35 US, some are even more. And then the shipping is really, really expensive on these. Not really sure why. So it's definitely better to buy more than one, and for a while, they didn't have as many of them available for it. So anyway, I wanted to get Cephas and Cygnus to start. I wouldn't mind getting the very first one, but it's out of stock now. Hopefully, they get some more of those printed, and then because I think it kind of details out how to use the series. And yeah, I'm just looking for those. I've had a number of members say that I'd probably enjoy them. So thanks to the people who were making those recommendations. I'm going to give them a shot. But even still, it was like $103 US for me to order them and get them shipped. So not inexpensive for a couple books. So I have high hopes, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard great things about them, so I'll be curious of your thoughts and review.
Yeah, I've been enjoying Alistair Ling sent a huge box of Deep Sky magazines from back in the 80s. So it's like a complete set.
Oh, wow.
So I brought a handful of those out here as well, but got to be careful what I bring out so far because I can't put everything into the observatory yet because we are still working in there probably for much of the summer, I'm guessing. And but anyway, once it's done, I'm gonna house those in the observatory. Just be cool to have them sitting up there and to be able to get a comfy chair or something in there and be able to just go up, sit, read. I think it'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that sounds like a perfect afternoon.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was out on Thursday and Friday evenings with Mike on Friday evening. Clouds and wind ended it early on Thursday, but I got about an hour in,
Nice.
pretty decently. Yeah, you can kind of sort of start observing at about quarter after 11
Mm,
ish. But even from Thursday to Friday, I noticed a difference in how bright the sky stayed. In fact, from Thursday evening to Friday evening, I noticed that maybe I just didn't look carefully enough, but on Thursday I could not see the perpetual twilight, and on Friday I could see quite clearly the perpetual twilight was visible right to the north when Mike and I packed down at 1:30. So yeah, it was. I think that's now perpetual twilight for sure. Guess it runs about a month and a week or something like that for this area. So it was nice. It was really nice. Thursday was really, really clear, but had some clouds coming through,
mm.
and there was tons of wind. You'd never ever set up outside of an observatory. Even on my deck, I never would have set up a telescope. It was just way too windy. It was about, I'm gonna say it was about 30-ish kilometers an hour, maybe gusting to 40. And but in the observatory, it was fine. Just every 5 or 6 minutes, I'd get a gust that I could actually feel. But I've got the telescope pretty stable now, so it had no impact on the telescope or the usage of the telescope at all. It didn't cause any vibration or anything. So it's awesome. Yeah, that the setup is working as designed. It's still getting cold at night. The last night it was like 3 degrees here, so not super warm. And on Friday night it get down, I guess around 8 degrees. And we had some cloud passing through. It wasn't as clear like in general, but it was sort of clear overall. Like there was some thin haze or something in the sky, and we had a few clouds passing through, but no showstoppers like the night previous. The night previous was really unfortunate because Thursday was absolutely crystal clear, and then you could just see this cloud coming, and eventually, like a few clouds passed over, and then the whole sky eventually got gobbled up. But Friday night, yeah, we saw the 3% moon in our binoculars, so that was pretty cool. Played around with the finder scope, still trying to get that working. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's kind of a pain the way I have it set up now. I don't know. Mike gave me an eyepiece that worked, and then even once we had the eyepiece in that worked, there's some shortcomings. So I'm still not totally dialed in for that. But
Which finder is this?
the Borg 50
Oh,
Acromat,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I put it on a finder stock, and like I have a few different ways I can do it. That's the way I would like to work. But like the finder stock that it works with, like it won't work with all of them. It's very cobbled together, but it has one of those. It's like a compression screw, and then it has the two screws you adjust. But oh, man, it is kind of a bit painful to work with. So I don't know. That's definitely not my favorite. So I kind of
Oh. So it's
gotta
the
fix.
mounting part that isn't working very well?
Yeah, well, it's just like the mounting is fine. It's just the way it sits in the holder and the way the eyepiece sits in it. Like if I use like a 1 1/4 inch holder, like right now what I'm doing is just putting it in a 2 inch to 1.25 and 1.24 adapter. But that does not work well at all. It sucks, in fact. It kind of gets a bit loose after a short period of
Mm,
time. You end up having to futz with it. And once it gets like once you use it for about an hour, it's just almost becomes unusable. So it's really kind of not the
mm,
best. But the eyepiece Mike gave me is like 40 years old, and it's like an old Celestron silver one, and it was awesome in that little scope. It was really good. It only gave about 5 degree field of view, and with the 5 inch, it seems like not really worthwhile because by the time the object is anywhere near the center of the field, or even like on the edge of the field of view, it's already in the scope at low power, right?
mm,
So, but this is really for, like trying to get it set up for the 7 inch, which only is going to have like a 2.6 or 2.7 degree true field of view. So
mhm.
this would work better, but still trying to figure out how best to do it. And I really want to have the ability to use different eyepieces in it, which in this configuration, it does not. Like I don't have any eyepieces that work in it, and Mike just happened to have this old one, and it works perfectly. But it's again, that eyepiece is awesome, but the way the actual mechanism is functioning just isn't quite there. So yeah, well, I'm going to try a couple different things and see. But I mean, the easiest solution almost seems to be to get a slightly longer focal length objective, either a 45 ED2 or the new 54 Acromat or something like that, because that will extend it out. But yeah, we'll see. Anyway, I did some sketching. I sketched M97 and M108, M97 being the Owl Nebula, and M108 being the that spiral galaxy that's just up in the bottom of the bowl of the Big Dipper, which was awesome. I did a sketch of M7 towards the end of the night, which is great because one of the things that I wanted to be able to do in this observatory is to be able to observe M7 because that's the lowest declination Messier target. So from this observatory, not at all times, but I get the lowest Messier culminating for almost an hour. I don't think quite an hour, but you can see it for about 50 minutes, I think, by my calculations. So that's more than enough time to actually get a view of that target. And then the other ones are higher up. So throughout the year, if I get good nights and good views to the south, I should eventually be able to see all the Messiers from there. So well, that'll be cool to be able to do that. Should be a lot of fun.
Mhm.
We took a look at M6 as well, the Ring Nebula. Took a look at that on Mike's 12-inch. He set that up. Messier 13, Messier 4, Grapheus up there, top star in the claw of Scorpius, which is a nice double star Mike pointed out, which is
Mhm.
awesome. Took a look at NGC 5907, which is that edge on. I think that's the one that's referred to as Messier 102 sometimes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what Mike was saying when I showed it to him. He was like, "Oh, that's M102, quote unquote." Yeah, so that's the story on that. Took a look at M101. It was right overhead, and we could see we could see two or three of the H2 regions in it.
Oh, nice.
That was pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, and two arms as well.
Okay.
And we took a look at the globular NGC 5897, which Peter Jedicke was talking about, and M80, M107, M62, which are all globulars, M5, which is a globular, and then the Crescent Nebula. We took a look at that. That was pretty awesome to see. They're just off of what is it, Gamma Cygni, and
Nice.
yeah, we were able to see that. I wish I had sketched it. It was just like there was some cloud kicking around, so
Yeah.
the time just didn't avail itself. But yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, good for you guys getting some productivity time in during perpetual twilight. In the past, I think we've just not even really tried. So I think it's
Yeah.
good that you guys are able to get out and get some good observations in.
Yeah, we always try to do a couple sessions anyway. But I admit this is like one of my favorite skies to see, and I've really missed that in my observing since I moved here because it is not dark until midnight-ish,
Mhm.
and you only get a couple hours. And here in the coming weeks, we'll get down to an hour. But of course, we're into the full moon period. But do we have time to talk about Gene's email really quick, or do you have to run?
Yeah, if we're quick.
Yeah, so Gene emailed, he said, have you heard of ADC, which are the atmospheric dispersion correctors? Have you heard of those?
I've heard of them. I don't know that they're for visual. I think they're largely like for astrophotographers, or do you know more about that?
So yeah, this is something I looked into. You can get them for the astro imaging, and I'm not sure that they need to be slightly different, I think, for visual, is my understanding. And they would be exorbitantly expensive. I think you can get them, or you might be able to use the more expensive astro imaging ones
Mm.
for a visual. So these would correct for atmospheric secondary spectrum color if you're looking at targets that are low down. I've done some research on it, and that's what I concluded is that this is expensive, and that I will just wait for planets to be higher.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe,
I do know like I have looked at the price before, and yeah, maybe maybe at some point in my life, but
yeah,
there's too many other things I want. So
yeah,
yeah.
maybe for Venus or Mercury at some point in time. Seems pretty specialized for those two targets, but
Mhm.
stranger things have happened. Have you heard of? Okay, we've talked about like the SQM light meters before. How do you use it? Will you change it? Like I don't use mine. I've used it a few times in the past, but even when I was selecting this site, I didn't use it. And the reason why, and I'm not like a huge fan of them, like maybe I can be convinced, but I think they're neat and they do have a use. Um, but for me anyway, like if you point it at the Milky Way, you get an odd reading, or if there's a cloud, or if there's some light somewhere, you can get readings that make a bright sky seem not as bright. And this is sort of my experience. And then if you go to a site that's dark but is very, very compromised, you can actually get some pretty good readings. And I just don't like that. Like it just really bugged me about it because we'd be out at a site and I'm like, this site isn't that good. And there'd be somebody there, oh no, it's good because the SQM is saying it's good. I'm like, but it's just not. We're like beside a highway. There's all these bright lights from this local town. But if you do point it at the darkest spot and the cars aren't there and everything's like lining up for that moment, yeah, it's good. But then 30 seconds later, there's a car with high beams going by, like,
Mhm.
and the neighbor comes over and turns a light on, and then the other neighbors all turn their lights on, and then it deteriorates pretty quickly. That's why I'm just not a big fan of those. I just like to go out, look at a site, determine if it's good or not, and then go from there. How about you, Shane?
Um, you bring up some good points. Like there's a lot of variables when assessing a sky. I do like the SQM as sort of a like an indicator. It's certainly not the only factor, though, as you
No.
mentioned. And I think some things to keep in mind if you're going to use an SQM is, and this is sort of like, with any sort of, somewhat sciencey approach, is try to eliminate the variables. And one of the key things that you need to do is constantly take your readings by pointing at zenith. Don't pick a dark part of the sky or point it
Yeah.
away from the Milky Way or whatever. Hit zenith every time. I hold it over my head as long as my arm
Hmm.
can reach, and then I'll do 3 to 5 readings because it does vary a little bit too with each reading. So then I like
Yeah.
to kind of average it out. And then even further to that, like average it out over multiple nights as well.
Yeah.
And then that gets you a little bit more of an idea of the sky itself
Yeah.
It doesn't take into account, obviously, as you mentioned, car lights and things like that that
Yeah.
can really make a site useless. So,
Yeah.
but I do like it. Like I'm a data guy, so I do like quantification of things, and to me, without that, it becomes a little subjective as well. But at some point, there needs to be some subjectivity because there are other factors you can't measure.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't know. Like I'm still not sure of the usefulness of it. Like that, I guess that's what it boils down to for me. Like even if you collect the data, like for example, my site is supremely dark in the north. It's really good overhead. And then to the south, it's probably like fifth magnitude-ish. And that's fine. Like that's fine for a site that's within an hour of my house and less than, half an hour to the city. That's like a pretty good site. It's a compromise. But if I just yeah, it takes more description than a number to give you good sight reading. Yeah, it's just one part of the puzzle, I suppose. But again, like I don't know what the usefulness of it. Like I can go out to a site and observe there for 5 minutes and tell you if it's good or not. Like you know what I mean?
Well,
Like
I think the
yeah,
usefulness is if we had a database with the various readings, and if you could sort of trust that people did them accurately,
yeah,
you get just a sense of like, is it better to go to point A or point B if you have, say, two locations to choose from?
yeah,
It gives you just a little bit more
yeah.
information to
Sure,
make a decision.
sure. Fair enough. Fair enough. I think the new ones are better. Maybe you have one of the newer ones. I think the new ones are better also.
Yeah, yeah, I have one of the latest ones, so
Yeah,
I'll bring it out one time and we can
yeah.
play around.
And that's what somebody told me is that the newer ones are really awesome. And mine is not. Mine's like mine's like an old one they found at the RA, like the National RASC office, and they just sent it to me years ago. I'm not even sure if I still have it. I think I'm going to send it back. But anyway, he also asked last question: how do you preserve dark adaptation when using list, chart, sketch? Do you have eye patches, or just sacrifice a little bit of dark adaptation? I don't use eye patches. The way the eye works with stereoscopic vision is that the other eye will be impacted even if you cover it with an eye patch. Not as much, like the actual photon receptors will actually be like just marginally better, but it's not going to not impact your night vision if you put an eye patch on, and then like it might be noticeable, but it will be sort of a marginal thing. So I just try not to have too much light on at all. For me, anyway, when I sketch, I use amber light, typically filtered down pretty heavily to red, so that like it's very difficult to even sketch. Like it takes some practice. And we're using like it's not an inexpensive light. It's like a tiny little light. It's $20, and then we filter that down. So it's actually an amber light that we filter to red. So it's very heavily filtered. By we, I mean me, and this isn't like an idea I came up with, but it's like a night reading lamp that we filter to red from amber. So anyway, that's how I do it. Shane, dark adaptation. How do you stay dark adapted?
Just use as little light as possible. My
Yeah,
astronomy flashlights are 100% variable brightness, so I
yeah,
tone it down to the lowest setting that still allow me to see what I need. And then, if I can, like determine that, say, a car is coming, or that there's some other light source that might
yeah,
take away my dark adaptation,
yeah,
just look away and close my eyes, for a
yeah.
moment to let that pass, and then then I'm good. So that's really it. Yeah, I don't get into the eye patches or anything like that, and yeah, that seems to work for me. There's
Yeah.
there's there's one other question here too, just quickly, about bino viewers and double stars. Do I
Oh,
use
sorry, I missed
bino
that one.
viewers
Go for
for
it.
double stars? And the answer is yes and no. If I'm set up for bino viewing, then yeah, for sure, I'll look at double stars with
Mm,
them. But a lot of my recent double star observing in the backyard has been mono viewing, but with a zoom eyepiece, because then
mm,
I don't have to mess around with different eyepieces for different magnifications, and that is pretty important with some doubles. If you're really looking at some close ones, sometimes you need more magnification to split them. So having the
mm.
zoom is a little more convenient than swapping eyepieces in the bino viewer.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Anything else to add to the show?
That is it, Chris.
Well, thanks for hanging out about another 10 minutes, and I hope you enjoy your new FOA 60 F88 to F15. And I look forward to looking through it whenever you get the chance to show me.
For sure.
Thanks for listening. I was going to say thanks for watching. Nobody's watching anything. Thanks for listening, and be sure to share the show with other stargazers you know. Send us your show ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.